Good morning, friends. Dena Adravachu, and to my Nepali compatriots, Shubhakamna. It's wonderful to be the last speaker in this series because over the last 2 days, I've been fortunate to observe what others have said and soak everything in that's been happening at this conference. It's also very terrifying to be the last speaker because of the profundity of all the everything that the other speakers have said. And I kept asking myself, what could I possibly say that could hold a candle to what has already been said? But before I begin, I want to acknowledge a couple of things that much of what I'm going to talk about this morning has been informed, I'm sure, subconsciously, by the terrific fortune that I had to be able to work in Malawi for 10 years for the Malawi Bridge Project. And in particular, 2 people who have really shaped my thinking and provided leadership and mentorship to me. I want to acknowledge them, Jane Brown and Kirsten Boza, who are part of that project. And I bring that up because if you don't like what I have to say today, you know who to blame. But as I've been walking around at this conference and thinking about SBCC as a field, there are a few things that have jumped out at me. And I want to talk about those things in the context of whether SBCC is at the crosshairs or at the crossroads. I believe, as someone mentioned the other day, that if we had had this conference 20 years ago, there would probably have been just a handful of people in attendance, right? And today, look at this strong force. So we are no longer the baby as a field. We have done the crawling. We have lost our milk teeth. We are now growing up into adolescence. I believe that that's where we are as a field, with all the terrible acne, the insecurity, and everything that comes from just coming of age. And it struck me that as I was walking around, that, we feel bombarded. Bullets are coming at us from many different directions, right? They're coming at us from the biomedical community, from scientific journals because we can't do RCTs. They're coming at us from donors because they don't understand what we really do, how long behavior change takes. And worst of all, they're coming from ourselves. I don't know how else to say it. Are we not the best in clipping our own wings? No one has to tell us how bad we are. We do that very well, thank you very much. We bring up things like, oh, they want RCTs. I couldn't possibly do RCTs. Communication is messy. Behavior change takes time. Donors don't understand all the things we have to go through, right? Communication environment is always so challenging. Imagine for a second that your job was the opposite. Imagine that you had to sell a product that costs the equivalent of a meal every day. It makes you look old, smells bad, can seriously have negative impacts on the newborn. It makes people cough. It's addictive, and it kills 6 million people a single year. How would you sell that product? You've come a long way, baby. And this is how we sell that product, right? And yet, we do not often stop to think about all the different ways in which we can celebrate what we have achieved. Here's one. This is what we have achieved. We have achieved from 1979 an immunization rate that was close to 40% to now almost all our infants throughout the world are immunized. There's a lot to be happy about for what we have achieved. So let's throw this away. Let's throw away the crosshairs. Let's think instead about the crossroads and pardon the lousy image that I found on Google Images, of all the things that we can celebrate as a community. So what I thought I would do this morning is go out on a limb somewhat, given that this was our inaugural session, and propose perhaps the Addis Declaration. It's a working draft. I would hope, thank you. It's a working draft. I hope it's a good beginning. I hope we can all contribute to this document so that the next time we meet, it's richer, fuller, and applicable to all our lives. So my first proposition, it's, Proposition 1, social and behavioral change communication is a process. It is not messaging. It's not mHealth. It's not a brochure. It's not a product. That is why we do not put the S in communication, because that's a product. We are for the process. Proposition number 2. Let's change our assumptions. Our clients do not just want to live a life without diseases. They want to lead happy and productive lives to better themselves, their children, their communities, their countries, and the world that we all inhabit. We want to design and implement programs with them, not for them or to them. Proposition number 3, how we in this room live our lives. We in this room are also inhabitants of the world in which our clients live. It is incumbent upon us to model our lives in the way we would have our clients live theirs. Proposition 4, before I get into that, I want to share with you one of my favorite studies. Here's the finding from that study. It's a study done in the 1980s. And let me just take a minute to walk you through what you see here. On the x-axis at the bottom is the level of lead in the umbilical cord when a woman is giving delivery to her baby. Okay? Low level of lead, medium level of lead, high level of lead. On the y-axis is what cognitive psychologists call a C12, which is your measure of the cognitive functioning of a child that is 12 months old, I'm sorry. And it's based on how long it takes a child to respond, to look, and so forth. And then the two lines pertain to people from moms who are either from low socioeconomic class, meaning education and income, or high socioeconomic class. Now, what's very interesting is that at very low levels of lead, cognitive functioning is high for both groups, right? When lead levels are very high, cognitive functioning is very low, 12 months later, mind you. The unanswered question, and nobody has been able to come up with a solid response why this occurs, is what the heck is happening in the middle? That is, after all, the amount of exposure to lead that most of us are exposed to. Why would kids from poorer homes perform so much less than kids from richer homes? Now, why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing this with you because, among other things, if you look at the x-axis, that's work that's done by toxicologists. They measure blood, they measure lead in the blood. Bench scientists. On the y-axis is work done by cognitive psychologists. They measure things like cognitive functioning. And then the two lines is work done by sociologists who study socioeconomic status, among other things. This work could never have been done by one discipline alone. If only cognitive psychologists were to work, they would never have asked the question that would have led to this finding. So in that light, my proposition number 4 is that we adopt a multidisciplinary approach. We have to. The problems we try to tackle are complex. They require the input from lots of people, lots of disciplines, looking at the same problem from multiple lenses. And if we inhabit this world where we are only talking to ourselves, we will never produce that graph. It is critical that for the next time we meet, that we see our colleagues from neuroscience, from microbiology, and from all over the place. It also means that we need to include other disciplines in our work, and we need to infiltrate those disciplines with our work, which further means we need to be able to speak that language, and therefore, we need to train our colleagues to speak those languages. Proposition number 5, we have professional obligations. Obligations to disseminate our findings, and we all know that, but I want to present another reason why we might want to do that, beyond just disseminating what we have achieved. We all work in public health, working with precious public health resources, so it's incumbent upon us to use the best evidence that is out there, to use the best methods that are out there so that we use those public health funds in the best way possible, which means that we have to go to that literature, and more importantly, we need to contribute to that literature so that the future scientists, future professionals, future SBCC professionals can benefit from that work. It also means that we train SBCC professionals, particularly our junior colleagues, by providing them with opportunities to network, by providing mentorship to them, by, most importantly, role modeling our own behaviors. Proposition number 6, we must relentlessly pursue rigorous evaluations. I don't need to talk more about that in this room, but one of the reasons why we want to do that is precisely for the reason that I've just stated, that we should be working with programs with known effectiveness. Proposition number 7, we need to build in cost effectiveness analyses in our programs and cost benefit analyses whenever we can. If we are constantly trying to show and to make the case that what we do matters, let it be seen in hard numbers so that policymakers who are making these decisions have the tools they need to provide us with the funds that we need. Proposition number 8, this is a little messy, so let me see if I can walk you through this. We need to adopt a behavioral attribute approach. Now, what do I mean by that? Not all behaviors are created equal. And so when we take what has worked in one setting and try to apply it to another setting, we all know that we should adapt it according to the context. We all know that we should adapt it according to the culture, according to the people, the demographics that we're trying to reach. But the very thing we are trying to change, the behaviors themselves, we have no theory about different approaches to different behaviors. Some behaviors are addictive, others are not. Some behaviors are enacted in a public setting, others are done in the privacy of our bedrooms. Some behaviors cost a lot, others are for free. Some behaviors we only do a one shot, like a immunization, literally, right? Whereas other behaviors we have to do repeatedly. What this means is that unless we have some way to map our behaviors according to these attributes, we won't know what programs are most likely to succeed. Because behaviors with different properties are going to be subject and vulnerable to changes in different ways. We talked about addictiveness 2 days ago, And this speaks to that issue as well. Addictiveness is one of the many important properties or attributes that define a behavior. Proposition number 9, let's recognize that the action is in the interaction. Now, what do I mean by that? You know, in public health, at large, there's always been a healthy tension, particularly in the last 15 to 20 years, between, on the one hand, people who say, you know, everything is in the social factors, in the camp that is all about structural change, that you change policy, behaviors will follow. You change housing. You deal with these big issues, right? And people will change. Another way to think about that is the old saying, build it and they will come. Well, will they? For the last 30 years, we've been working on the other side that says the action is with the individual. Improve their skills, change their knowledge, improve their attitudes, improve their self-efficacy, change their risk perceptions, change the social ties, and so forth. Well, who is right? Probably both. But probably the action is in the interaction. When we bring these two factors together, then we're going to enhance the success. Let me walk you through one example of that. This comes from work that we did a number of years ago, looking at how norms and efficacy affect adolescents' susceptibility to drinking. And what we find is that, yes, as you can see over here, when norms are high or norms are low, it does not matter if the person has high efficacy to resist drinking. In other words, if an adolescent has the skills to say, you know what, I'm not going to drink, it doesn't matter whether that person is in a helpful environment or an unhelpful environment. But if the person lacks in efficacy, then if they are in an environment where the drinking norm is prevalent, they are much more likely to drink. So it's not just efficacy, it's not just norms, it's how those two things come together that determines what happens. Very quickly, these are all the acronyms I got from, believe me, just 2 reports. Who the heck talks like that? Why do we insist on using these kinds of messages that say, hey, do not talk to me? This is one way to be completely insular as a field. So I propose we slash and burn all the acronyms. Oops. Number 11, I'm almost done, I promise you. Let's pay special attention to unintended effects. I was talking to a colleague yesterday about bicycle lanes in many cities that are now being built. And she said to me, yeah, those are great because they promote bicycle riding, but has anyone looked at emergency rooms to see if there's been an increase in fatalities? In the US, after $1 billion being spent on PSAs to reduce drugs, guess what? A certain group of the adolescents increased their curiosity about drugs the more they were exposed to the PSAs. So well-intentioned actions can have negative consequences, and it's incumbent upon us to explore what those might be. And lastly, it's not worth it if we're not having fun. And I want to leave you with this quote from Albert Bandura, who said, happiness is seldom obtained pursuing it. It is the unexpected byproduct in the service of humanity. Thank you very much. Amasaganalu.